Good morning, I'm Maria from the Richardson Simple Living. This morning I was going to talk to you about menus. We were on week 3, wasn't we, this week? I was going to show you my menus and what I've done for the month. But I thought I'll put that till tomorrow. I'm going to do that tomorrow. What I want to talk to you about today actually is history. And it's something over the weekend that made me think about it. Well, I've been thinking about it a long time, but yesterday I really thought about it. As you know, I've probably mentioned that I've had various family members die, and I've been sorting out the homes. And when you're doing that, you're looking through old pictures and letters, things like that, that piece together people's lives, not just the lives of the people that have passed away, but lives of their ancestors, relatives, friends. You're getting a whole lot of information. So I'm thinking to myself, history. When we do history with our children, we tend to think of history in the world. Like Normandy always seems to be a starting point. Things like that. The kings, queens, all the things that shaped history in that respect. We never actually stop and think history really begins right here with ourselves, right here. This is history. I mean, it's like looking through all the photos and looking at the people, and you think, what were their lives like? What did they actually do? What did they think? What did they feel? Jobs did they do? For the time period that they lived in, what was times like then? So you're branching out all the time thinking, what? And that's history. That's all history. It's your own family history. I mean, I've probably mentioned it before, I don't know, that I do study genealogy, as in family trees and things like that. I love doing my family tree. I've done a lot of my family tree way back to the 1400s on quite a lot of different sides, because as you go back it doubles, each side doubles again, and before you know it, there's thousands on your family tree. But each of those people living in a different time period, so you could be doing your normal history, get your textbook out and looking at a king, a queen of a certain era. My math never works, does it? A king and queen of a certain era. But you could be looking at your family tree, doing your history of your family, and find a family, so many times great grandparents that lived in that period, brought their children up in that period, and they were the people living the actual lives from that period. The hardships, the joys, struggles, everything about it. And it's nice to piece all that together. So this is what I'm thinking now. I mean, all my family know what I'm like with history, and I've got another brother who's the same, who's saying he's hoping to retire in the next couple of years, and he's saying to me, let's go on a quest. Let's go to all these places and research more into the family tree. And he's asking me to write down, because I've got the biggest tree. I've done all the work, and I've got loads of history, loads of stories from family members going back a few generations, and jobs they did, where they lived, even people they knew, and I know their ancestors today. It all needs writing down, because at the moment it's mostly up there. And like my brother says, when you go, who's got all what's in your head unless you write it down? And I'm thinking, yeah. And that takes me then to think about keeping journals, diaries, or just writing in a journal book every day. Things you do, they might seem nothing to you, might seem just plain old boring mundane things, but that's all pieces of your life that somebody further down the line could be studying, and that makes up the time you live in, the things you did, how life was. So I think it's really important, and this is something now I'm going to be encouraging Sean to do as part of her home education, her studies, is to start keeping a journal. And I'm thinking now every morning we need to start writing a journal, or in an evening, maybe in an evening, because obviously you haven't done your day's events then, have you? Unless she's writing it from the day before. But I think even if it's just in note formation, it's all there and it's down, and it's great because we all live through historic periods, all of us. It's like I was saying to Sean when she was in school last year. Well, when all the schools closed last year. I mean, it's history that we're living through this virus at the moment, like people who lived through the Black Plague and things like that. We're living through this virus, and this is what I'm telling Sean. And it's like part of history, the fact that she was in year 6 and was one of the students that went back to school when they said it was okay. I think it was last June time they went back, even though it's something like 6 or 8 weeks they went back for. But you know, that's part of history. I said to her, you lived that part of history, and one day your grandchildren or great grandchildren may be asking you about that. So yeah, I mean, thinking about history, it was just making me think yesterday because I was having to go through things, and I was given a great big hold all of photographs, as I always get given the photographs for the family. And I'd been talking to one of my brothers obviously about it, and I was just saying, and we were saying we need to write it down and everything. And I was thinking, this is something Sean should be having as part of it. I mean, still do a history that she does because that's important, but I think along with that history, she needs to be doing family history, because like I say, family starts right here, right here. Everyone's history is looking at them in the mirror. So I think it would be great for her to do some genealogy studies as part of history. And it's fascinating. I don't know whether any of you are into that sort of thing, but it's history, isn't it? It is all history. I mean, we don't think our lives are very historic when you're getting up in the morning and you're putting your washer in the washer, pressing the button, and then going to do your breakfast dishes and things like that. But you know, I look back at my great grandmother and I think, how on earth did they do all the jobs they did? You know, they did so much more than we did today. I mean, washing the doorstep. I've never washed my doorstep. Mind you, it's wooden, it's not stone anyway. But I'm thinking, how did they fit all that in? And then looking back at her, the things she did, she had a day for everything. I mean, your grandparents, great grandparents probably did. Monday was always wash day, and it was with my mum as well, because it was such a big procedure. It's not like me getting up in the morning, chucking my clothes in the electric washer, pressing the button, and away it goes, and I go and do something else while that's on. It was a big job to them. They had to get out all the big dolly tubs and the mangoes and things like that. It was a big job washing it all and drying it, but always on a Monday. Didn't do no other job on a Monday. It was always on a Monday. I know there was a day for cleaning brasses as well. All the brasses got cleaned and everything. And I'm sure my great grandmother probably did all the polishing and everything on that day, probably. She was doing all the brasses. I know Friday was a baking day. They did all the baking on a Friday to last them through to the weekend, all kept airtight in tins. And then that, to them, they'd have thought, oh, I've got to go, it's this day to do that today, and they wouldn't have thought that was anything interesting or fascinating. But we look back at it now and it is fascinating. Just like in years to come, people's going to look back at us and they probably have got bigger, fancier inventions, and they say, oh, my grandmother, my great grandmother had to load the washing machine in the morning, switch it on, then go do something else while that was doing, then go back to it and put it through the dryer while she went off and did something else, and all them jobs in one day. And I'm thinking, maybe I should have a day for everything. But to them that will be fascinating. To us it's just, oh, I've got to do that again and again, every day's the same. But to them it will be fascinating, because a couple of 100 years from now things will be done differently. And then they'll look back at my great grandparents and go, oh, and that's how they did it, 100 years or so before me. So yeah, I couldn't help but thinking about it, thinking of history. I think we look at all the kings and queens and battles and things that shape the country. But what about our history? I mean, last week we were doing, on Sean's history, we were doing review questions, and we were going back to the villains and people who work the land, and your peasants and that, and you just say it. You don't really give it over thought. It's just, you say it and you know it, sort of thing. But what if you could get the history of one of those peasants, villains, or anybody, and just take them and find out what their daily life was really like? What did they think? What did they feel? What contributions did they make to the economy, and by the way of the jobs they did, and how did they feed the family? Were the days they didn't eat? Were the days they had plenty? What was it really like? Or what was family time like? What celebrations did they have? There's so many questions and so much that we can learn from it. So this is what I'm thinking now, that we are going to do some family studies as part of our history. I mean, Sean does know a lot of it because we talk about it all the time. In our house, it is living history. I mean, you wouldn't know who was dead from who was alive to hear people talk in our family, because we talk about them all the time and look at photos, and this was so and so and that. So Sean is used to relatives that she's never known, even relatives I've never known. I feel I know really well, and it's like they're a part of your life, really. I mean, well, it shapes who you are, doesn't it? Where you come from, it shapes who you are. I mean, like, you have interests and things in my family. There's a lot of interest in music and art, and there's a lot of good artists, but that all comes from my maternal line, because in those days they always had a piano in the house. Well, my great grandmother ensured that my granny and a sister and a brother all played musical instruments. They all had their own instrument. My great uncle, he had the piano. My grandmother played the violin. I don't know what her sister played. I'm not sure what she played. Not discovered that yet. But they did all play instruments. And painting, they all love painting. My mum did great artwork. One of her sisters does great artwork. And some of my sons, they're fantastic artwork. And so lifelike, some of it they do. But this is where they're getting it from. You can see it going through the line and where it's come from. And poetry, I've got a brother who wrote poetry, and I used to write poetry as well. And one of my great uncles wrote poetry. So you can see what genetics you're getting from where your interests come from, things like that. So by knowing the past as well, it makes you understand yourself better. I think you have a much better understanding of yourself. It's like, oh, that's why I like such and such, or you might look like something, think, oh, that's where I got my nose from, which incidentally is my dad's nose, which was his dad's nose, and his dad's before him, because I've seen pictures. So yeah, you pull all that out, and you get to know yourself better, and get to know the whys and wherefores of things, and it is interesting, it is fascinating. So I think we are going to incorporate this as part of our history now. It's great to do, and at the same time we can be writing it all up as well, and going out when we're able to go out, go and do some research, because I have found some burial places nearby of some of my ancestors. So I'd like to go and research some of that when we're able to. I mean, we can go out walking at the moment, but the weather isn't too good, and a lot of these places, churchyards and that, because they're in the old parts, are really boggy and everywhere's so wet. So once the better weather comes, we can do some field trips of things like that. So yeah, I just wanted to come on and say that today, because I'm thinking about it all the time. It's all fresh in my head, and I thought, well, we'll do the menus tomorrow. I just wanted to talk about history today and what we're going to be doing with it, incorporating our genealogy into it. So, and also as you go back, I mean, thinking of kings and queens and their lords, ladies and things like that, you don't know who you're related to. I mean, so far I've come across 3 sirs on various parts of my tree, and very wealthy people and influential people. So you just don't know. You just do not know who you're going to come across. So you could be related to a king or queen. I mean, 2 sides of my family, they come from Normandy. Well, they come via that way. And one side of my family came via William the Conqueror, actually. It came from Normandy with William the Conqueror, one line of my family. So it is really interesting. So I just wanted to tell you that today. I just wanted to say, where does history start? Well, it starts right here. Look in the mirror and start your history from there. Your history begins with you, and build on your family, their lives. I mean, I suppose really you could say your history started right back to the first person who started the family, but no, that would be too mind-boggling. It starts with you. Your history is right here, and every day we create history, and we can discover history via our families. So I hope you enjoyed that, and if you like that sort of thing, you know, I hope it inspires you to want to find more, because it is fascinating. So anyway, I'm going to leave it on that note now. It's coming up towards dinner time, so I'm going to sort Shana dinner out. This morning we've been doing some maths and English punctuation, grammar today, and some Bible reading we've done today. This afternoon we got science. She's not so keen on that. So I'm going to go and sort everything out now, and tomorrow I'll come back with the menus. I'll go over that with you tomorrow. So I shall see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye.